And hello, everyone. I'm Kira Phillips. Thanks so much for streaming with us here on ABC News Live. Nikolas Cruz pleading guilty to all 34 charges in court, taking responsibility to every murder in that 2018 Parkland massacre. But first, a look at some other top headlines right now, including an anonymous bomb threat at Walter Reed Medical Center in Maryland. A lockdown currently in place as authorities are investigating the threat. The public being asked to avoid the area. This is a developing story. We'll continue to update you as we know more. The White House announcing today its strategy to distribute vaccines for kids ages 5 to 11 if authorized by the FDA. 28 million American children would then be eligible to receive the shot. The plan, including ensuring the vaccination is available across the entire United States. Voting rights back on the table here at Capitol Hill. Senate Republicans on the Hill expected to defeat for a second time this year a Democratic attempt at federal election law reform. Many of these new laws came into fruition following the false claims by former President Donald Trump that the 2020 presidential election was a fraud. To this day, there is no evidence that that is true. The Queen of England must rest. Doctor's orders. Queen Elizabeth II will be resting at Windsor Castle after canceling a trip to Northern Ireland following medical advice to take a break. The world's longest reigning monarch, Queen Elizabeth II, has held her royal title for almost 7 decades after becoming queen at the age of 25. But we begin with that powerful and emotional court hearing today. Nikolas Cruz's date with fate has been made. The 23-year-old filing a guilty plea today to all 34 charges brought against him in connection to the shooting of 17 people at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in 2018. His defense team had previously offered a guilty plea in exchange for life in prison without the possibility of parole, an idea that was shot down by prosecutors seeking the death penalty. Joining us now, ABC News' Victor Akendo, who is there outside the courthouse, ABC News contributor Brad Garrett, and Manuel Oliver. Manuel lost his son Joaquin in that horrific shooting. Also, David Hogg, one of the survivors of that horrific massacre, joining us as well. David, it's the first time we've been able to talk since this hearing took place within the past 2 hours. Your first reaction as you, a survivor of that massacre, were able to listen in and also listen to the words of Cruz.
You know, there's nothing that can bring my classmates back. Frankly, all that I'm focused on at this point, and I know this is the case for many of my classmates as well, is how can we make sure that our generation is hopefully the last one to have to deal with this issue in the United States? Because none of us should have to live with this in the first place. But frankly, I don't even know if closure is possible. I think the closest thing to it that we can get to is making sure these things don't happen anymore. But in one way, I'm happy that things are moving forward, but also how many more times is our community going to have to go through this again and again? When what we want is justice, obviously, but I think many of us just want to have this chapter closed and move on to the, preventing these things from happening in the future.
What was it like just to hear the names of your friends, of your classmates read out loud, and to also, David, just hear every detail of what happened that day? Manuel Oliver telling us just before the break there were details he had not even heard before. So what was it like for you as a student?
Extremely disheartening. We grew up in a country where we were told our entire lives that the adults are here, that the adults were there to protect us when we were young, and now we are young adults. And it just speaks to the cost of political injustice and all forms of injustice in this country that lead to gun violence, whether it's violence outside of schools on a daily basis, intimate partner violence, or school shootings that happen. Because the fact of the matter is, I shouldn't be here right now having this conversation because the shooting shouldn't have happened in the first place. Because way before I was born, I was born after Columbine. This stuff should have ended even before that happened. We should have leaders that stand up and protect, our young people, everyday Americans, no matter the state they live in or the zip code that they're in or what school they go to, from instances like happened at my high school that day.
Manuel, as you listen to David, and I know that you know him well and you know what he has been doing just to honor his classmates, honor your son, and also move forward with advocacy and bringing the issue of gun violence and gun laws into the forefront. What do you say to David today as you both have come together and heard for the very first time the details of what happened that day, hearing the names of each and every student and faculty member that was killed, and also hearing from Nikolas Cruz for the first time, knowing what David has been doing and what you have been doing? What would you like to say to David on this day?
Well, I think that from all these panel, David has the last call. Why? Because he just said it a couple of weeks ago. The youth that want a change and that fight for a change and for better laws and for a safer future have plenty of time to do that. And this is not about, it should be about acting really fast, like as of today. But it's not going to happen in 1 year or two. But they will make that change happen. Now, I want to be part of at least the beginning of the change, and that's what gets me involved in here. But I trust not only David, but any young American that is already showing rejection to this kind of normal way of living. We need to learn how to criticize our mistakes, and we have a lot of mistakes. And every time I see these young leaders raising their voice, I hear my son Joaquin. And that gives me hope. So I'm glad that you invited David for this part of your segment. It brings some balance to my whole emotion from before. This is a good side of what happened after Parkland. David and his friends and every single young person fighting for safety is a good aftermath of Parkland.
And just looking, I'm reminded, David, I forgot about just the thousands and thousands of people that showed up as you have taken on this activism for gun control, and all these young kids out there with their signs and so determined to make a difference. And Victor, you have covered this from the very beginning, from 2018, when everyone showed up there for March for Our Lives. You were there at the school when the massacre happened. Now you are there today outside that courtroom. Victor, what was it like for you as the journalist who has been covering this from the very beginning to hear Nikolas Cruz, to hear the names of those students, to hear all the details of what happened that day, and just to be here with Manuel and David and also Brad, former FBI? Tell me what's going through your mind and what's happening there at the courthouse right now.
Well, Kira, we definitely expected Nikolas Cruz to plead guilty to every single charge, the 17 of murder and 17 of attempted murder. When we started hearing every single detail and we heard every single name read, I could immediately go back to 2018. I could see all of their pictures just flashing through in my head. It brought me right back there to that moment. I don't think that we were expecting to hear those painstaking details, every single moment that Nikolas Cruz, every step he took that day, from the Uber ride to Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High with that AR-15 in that black bag, to once he got inside of the school, which classrooms he fired into, who was shot, where and when. And I know that it was incredibly difficult for everyone watching, especially for the victims, their families, the survivors. David, Manuel, you're on with us here. I can't imagine what it must have been like for you guys, learning those new details about just people being shot, not just once, but over and over again. And then one more thing that I wasn't expecting. This was really the first time that we've heard from Nikolas Cruz himself since the shooting, and during his statement, which was addressed directly to the victims and their families, he apologized. He said that he has to live with this every single day, and that it brings him nightmares, that if he could do it differently, he would do his best to help people. He understands that the victims' families probably don't believe him here, but he did want to go ahead and take a moment here to address them. I don't think that Nikolas Cruz is going to gain any compassion here from anyone, especially anyone who lived through these incredibly difficult moments. And now, just procedurally, what will happen next? The penalty phase, that's when eventually a jury of 12 will decide whether or not he gets life in prison or is sentenced to the death penalty. Kira?
And Manuel, you said absolutely no compassion as you listened to Nikolas Cruz. It only empowered your pain, but it also has empowered your advocacy and moving forward to make change. Is as you felt that pain again and deeper in ways that you have not felt before, especially hearing details you had not heard before, how did this moment today empower what you are going to do moving forward?
I always think that pain is good. It has a good side. Because it could move you to living with your pain. It will move you to do things. That's why when someone tells me, "Oh, don't worry, time will be able to heal your pain," and I don't want that to happen. You know, I need to carry this pain. This pain is the only thing that empowers our movement. This pain is the one that is offering anything they need to David and his other groups that are fighting against gun violence. So I'm not the victim here. Okay, let's be very clear. I am not the victim here yet, because there are big chances that I could become a victim, or any of the 5 persons in your panel. So as long as I'm not the victim and my son is the victim, I have to be here for my son. It doesn't matter how I feel. It doesn't really matter how I feel. I will go to bed tonight, I'm going to eat today, and I'm going to keep on living. The thing is how I'm going to keep on living. What is it that I'm going to do moving on tomorrow and after tomorrow? What are you guys going to do tomorrow and after tomorrow, after you heard all those details, after you heard that we live in a place where you can take an Uber holding an AR-15 bag with 7 magazines on you, and then get into a school and thinking that the solution is putting a metal detector in the school? That will solve the problem. It's like a blind society that is not understanding until they kill someone they love. It's a big price to understand the lesson. You should understand it without that.
Brad, you're a former FBI agent. You are one of our contributors. You have covered so many of these mass shootings. What is so disturbing, one of the many things that was so disturbing to hear, is that Nikolas Cruz got into an Uber, dialed up and called an Uber with a rifle bag, with loads and loads and loads of ammo and a vest to protect himself with more rounds of ammo. And, you know, now we talk about how survivors and parents are channeling all this trauma of what happens to make change. And you saw the pictures, you saw the thousands of people that showed up at one of those rallies that David was able to put together with the support of families and parents and other students. Yet you say the chances that change can be made, even in the state of Florida, is going to be really tough. Give us the reality check.
So after Sandy Hook, everyone thought, how in the world could we leave existing gun laws in place? Myself obviously included. Manuel and David have pointed it out so clearly that clearly we do need to change the laws. We do need to make the access to AR-type assault rifles much more restrictive. All I'm suggesting in doing this for 4 decades and being a crime analyst day in and day out is that I don't see the system agreeing with that. They may personally, in a conversation like we're having now, agree, but they're not going to change the laws. And that's the most infuriating thing about this, is that, to your point of Nikolas Cruz planning every part of this event, which I'll tell you, in looking at literally multiple dozens of mass shootings, it's almost textbook in that regard. Vests, extra magazines, sometimes extra weapons, how they get there, how they exit. You know, many of them don't exit. They decide to take their own life or make law enforcement shoot them. Nikolas decided to escape and get caught 3 miles later. But
why? Why do you think he made that choice, Brad, from your experience? Because you bring up a good point. So many times they end up taking their own life, or they're killed in a shootout with law enforcement. The SWAT team comes in and, you know, game over. Why do you think he ran out of ammo, blended in with the crowd, and went down the street and was later arrested?
Because he didn't have the courage to kill himself or confront law enforcement, who probably would be forced to kill him. So it's just a variation, Kara, of the same theme. You know, all of these kids tend to have the same, with variations, of course, same types of troubled backgrounds. And it just becomes so infuriating from a reality base of no one really wants to look at what could we do to at least reduce the number of mass shootings. And as I said earlier, I just don't see it in any of these, particularly red state legislatures, changing the law. I mean, they've placed such an emphasis on the right to bear arms, the right to buy any weapon you want, the right to buy any capacity magazine you want. And clearly the states like Connecticut and others that have had mass shootings, particularly in the Northeast, have changed the laws, made them more restrictive. And of course, the problem with that is the state next door to them may not have the same restrictive laws. Like California has restrictive laws, but you can go into Nevada and buy almost anything you want. So it's, you know, there is no simple answer to this. All I'm suggesting is we have to build a better system to identify people like Nikolas Cruz, but maybe more importantly, how, as I mentioned earlier, how do you keep track of them? Nikolas Cruz, troubled kid in school, gets in a fight, gets kicked out of school, and once he turns 18, nobody really knows what he's doing day in and day out. You know, he's not mandated to go to mental health treatment. And he's also, which came out in this hearing so clearly, he's not crazy. He knew what he did. He planned what he did. And it's almost across the board in mass shooters, with few exceptions where severe mental illness sort of drove them to a certain extent, but not with Nikolas Cruz. I mean, you can make an argument, of course, that his troubled background, his anger, his rage, his difficulty in school, etc., were contributors. Well, yeah, but so what? He still did it, and he still planned it, and he ultimately killed 17 people and injured many more.
So, David, with what you just heard and the reality check of what you are up against in this battle for what you're fighting for, what keeps you going?
The fact that ultimately, as many talked about, we're young people. Ultimately, we're going to outlive the people that are in power right now. The question that my generation faces is, are we going to repeat the same mistakes that other ones have made? In Florida, in the wake of the shooting, we were able to pass, some comprehensive common sense gun laws that would have helped to stop the shooting from happening in the first place. One of the things that was brought up was some of the errors that were made around keeping track of this individual, despite him making many threats against the school. And things like that. We need a holistic all-of-government approach to address these things. We need to not just talk about how does somebody like a 19-year-old legally obtain an AR-15 and shoot and kill, so many of my classmates and administrators, but what motives they have that drive them to that. It's very clear that oftentimes white domestic terrorists, like the shooter at my high school, are framed as being mentally ill because of the double standard within the media. But the fact of the matter is, what he was saying, he knew what he was doing. And the fact of the matter as well is that he posted a lot of incredibly xenophobic, anti-Semitic, and racist comments online, and talked about how he wanted to kill people based off the color of their skin or, what they believed in. right? This speaks to a broader issue within our republic. This speaks to the fact that we have leadership that has failed. We have leaders that have chose to protect in the wake of these instances. Someone's access, like the 19-year-old at my high school, to an AR-15 instead of the right of my classmates and administrators and every person in the United States to not be shot. We have a right to not be shot. And with that, we have to realize that every part of our government, if we are letting our kids die in our schools, in our communities, and Americans die from an issue as preventable as gun violence, as basically every other country has figured out, and we are the only one that has to deal with it at this level, this is a choice. This is a choice that we're making every single day as people continue to die from gun violence. And that is a choice that we can change. We can choose to protect people. We can choose to protect, students in their schools and on their way to school, where the majority of, young people die of gun violence is outside of their school, and it's not talked about because there are all these different factors that compound around it. But that's what I would say keeps me going, is that this is not just, an act of God or some inevitable reality that we deal with. This is the reality that we've chosen to deal with, and we can choose not to deal with it anymore by working to protect our right not to be shot.
And you are choosing to be a leader in that battle moving forward, representing so many young people across this country. David Hogg, thank you so much. Manuel Oliver, we lift up Joaquin, and thank you just for your transparency, your honesty, and your love and your art. Brad Garrett, thank you. And Victor Akendo, there from the beginning, there for the final words from Nikolas Cruz. Appreciate all of you. Thank you so much for being with me throughout our coverage. We'll be right back with some of the other day's top stories. And welcome back. You are watching ABC News Live. So glad you're with us. Well, singer Celine Dion is announcing that her return to the stage in Las Vegas is now on hold due to, quote, unforeseen medical symptoms that are preventing her from performing. Our Deborah Roberts has the latest.
The news, no doubt, a crushing disappointment to fans of the international music superstar. A press release announcing Celine Dion's big return to the Vegas Strip currently on hold due to unforeseen medical symptoms, adding Celine has been experiencing severe and persistent muscle spasms, which are preventing her from performing. Dion, who was set to open at the resort's World Theater in less than 3 weeks, tweeting, "I'm heartbroken by this. My team and I have been working on our new show for the past 8 months, and to not be able to open this November saddens me beyond words. Now I have to focus on getting better. I want to get through this as soon as I can." A theater press release saying her medical team continues to evaluate and treat her. However, the symptoms she's experiencing are prohibiting her from participating in the ongoing rehearsals for the new show. Dion is one of the best-selling music artists of all time, a 5-time Grammy Award winner with album sales soaring above 250 million. The 53-year-old regularly producing hit after hit, with chart toppers like My Heart Will Go On, All by Myself, and That's the Way It Is. When I sat down with Celine in Vegas before her departure from Caesars in 2019, she was energized.
I feel so powerful and in charge and grounded and happy.
It radiates. It radiates. I see the happiness.
I can say more. I can say more.
What's your secret these days to staying healthy and fit and happy?
Don't need to prove myself to the industry, to my family, to my friends, because I think I've done it for many years. I do it because my passion has grown through the years, and now I do it because I have so much fun.
Thanks to Deborah Roberts for that. You know, World Resorts promises that the fans who were holding those tickets will be first in line when the show is rescheduled, but no word yet on when that might happen. In the meantime, Celine is hoping to go on with a world tour next spring. Well, that does it for us. I'm Kira Phillips. Thanks so much for joining us. Remember, ABC News Live is here for you all day with the latest news, context, and analysis. I'll see you back here at 3 p.m. Eastern with Terry Moran. Stay safe and have a fabulous rest of your day.